close your eyes and let everything fall away. The screen dissolves, the room softens, and the noise that followed you through the day begins to thin like mist. Whatever you were carrying in your mind, whatever task or worry still lingers, it can wait here at the edge of sleep. The ceiling above you is gone because the walls have opened into a darkness without edges. In their place, an ancient sky has appeared, untouched by any city light you have ever known. You are standing in the open desert, where the sun disappeared hours ago beneath the western horizon. All that remains is a faint amber stain along the lowest edge of the sky, thinning by the moment. Then that last trace of warmth vanishes, and the cold arrives, pressing against your skin like a hand made of glass. You feel it first on your cheeks, then across your fingertips, then deep inside your chest with every breath. The air is so dry that it tastes faintly of dust and stone when it passes across your tongue. But you are not afraid, because you are dressed for this night and for this ancient, wind-swept road. Heavy wool falls past your knees in a long coat lined with soft felted cotton pressed gently against your body. A wide scarf wound 3 times around your neck carries the faint scent of wood smoke and dried lavender. You pull the scarf higher, over your chin and across your lips, until your breath warms the cloth in a quiet pocket of heat. Beneath your boots, the sand is firm, packed tight by centuries of footsteps along this very trail. Each step lands with a soft, rhythmic compression, the sound of packed earth giving slightly under the weight of your body. Left foot settles, right foot follows, and the pattern repeats itself until it becomes as steady as a pulse. Beside you, close enough to touch, a camel moves with enormous, deliberate patience through the dark. Its shoulder rises well above your head, and each of its steps lands with a muffled heaviness, like a broad palm pressing into flour. The animal's breath comes in slow, deep pulls that you can hear clearly in the silence around you. Hung across its back, bundles wrapped in oiled canvas sway gently with every stride. Left and then right and then left again. Leather straps holding those bundles creak with a soft, patient sound, the kind of quiet groaning that old wood makes in a still house. Behind this camel there is another, and behind that one another, stretching the line deeper into the darkness. You do not need to turn around, because you can feel the caravan behind you, like a long, breathing presence in the night. Perhaps 40 camels, perhaps 50, their footsteps blending into a single rolling murmur across the sand. That sound is distant and continuous, like rain falling softly on a clay roof heard from inside a warm room. No one in the caravan speaks, because the desert at night asks for silence, and the travelers understand this deeply. Ahead of you, a man walks with the certainty of someone who has crossed this land many times before. His outline is dark against the stars, with broad shoulders beneath a heavy cloak and linen wound around his head. His pace does not change, because he knows every dune and dried riverbed along this ancient route. You follow him, the camels follow you, and the desert holds all of you gently in its vast, open hand. Now tilt your head back slowly and look up at what waits above you in the clear, freezing air. The stars are so numerous that the darkness between them seems like the exception rather than the rule. They burn with a steady, fierce brightness, white and blue and faintly gold, filling every corner of the visible sky. The Milky Way stretches across the center of the heavens, not as a faint suggestion, but as a wide, luminous river of light. You have never seen anything so bright above you, and yet the sky makes no sound at all. The silence is so complete that your own heartbeat rises to become the loudest thing in the world around you. You breathe in, drawing cold air laced with the faintest trace of juniper and sand into your lungs. Then you breathe out slowly, and the warmth leaves your body and vanishes into the dark above the trail. The caravan moves on, as it has always moved on, because for 1,000 years, lines like this one have traced this path. Merchants and monks, soldiers and scholars, carrying silk and spice and stories across the spine of the world. You are one of them now, and your feet have found the grooves worn into the ground by those who came before. There is nothing to solve tonight, nothing to answer, nothing that requires your attention beyond the walking and the breathing. Ahead, somewhere past the next ridge, a caravanserai waits with stone walls and a fire and hot tea brewed with salt. But that is for later, because right now there is only the rhythm of your boots on the ancient, packed sand beneath you. The stars turn slowly overhead, and the silk road stretches on into the deep, quiet, and endless night. Something is changing along the far edge of the horizon, where the black sky has softened into a bruised, deep blue that only appears just before dawn. The man at the front raises one hand without turning, and the long procession begins to slow as every camel shifts its weight and settles into stillness. He is pointing toward a low ridge where thick walls of packed mud press against the desert floor in the same pale clay color as the land. A wide gate stands open at the center, and above it a clay lantern holds a trembling flame against the fading dark. This is a caravanserai, a shelter that has stood along these trails for over 1,000 years to offer rest to anyone from the freezing dark. If you reached the gate, you were welcome regardless of origin or faith, and that was the oldest law of this road. You follow the last camel through the gate, stepping onto paving stones worn smooth by centuries of passage, and the wind vanishes entirely. The courtyard is wide and perfectly still, with arched doorways along its edges leading into shadowed rooms behind heavy curtains. Near the center of the courtyard, a fire burns inside a shallow pit lined with blackened stones and fed with pale, twisted desert scrub. You walk toward it without deciding to, drawn forward by something far older than conscious thought or intention. The heat reaches your face before you arrive, pressing against your frozen skin like the palm of a gentle, familiar hand. It spreads across your chest and down your arms, and something you did not know you were carrying begins to release from your shoulders. The tension falls away slowly, the way snow slides from a warm roof when the morning sun finally finds it. You sit on a low wooden bench beside the fire, its surface polished smooth by years of travelers resting in this exact spot. Then you pull your gloves off one finger at a time and hold your bare, pale hands toward the open flames. The warmth enters through your palms and travels inward, filling your fingers the way warm water fills a glass from the very bottom. It reaches your knuckles, then your wrists, then sinks deeper into the fine, tired bones hidden beneath your skin. You close your eyes, because nothing is required of you now except to sit here and breathe and let the fire work. The air inside these walls is rich, carrying the dry sweetness of burning scrub layered over the warm musk of damp wool. Threaded through those scents, arriving faintly from somewhere deeper in the courtyard, is the unmistakable fragrance of cardamom. It is warm and sharp, the kind of smell that seems to carry its own quiet color somewhere between amber and gold. When you open your eyes, an older man is crouching near the fire with a blackened copper pot held above the flames. His face is deeply lined from years of wind, and the pot in his hand looks worn from what must be 1,000 uses. He does not look up, because this ritual requires no introduction between the one who gives and the one who receives. Dark, curled leaves drop into the trembling water and slowly unfurl in the heat, like small fingers carefully opening. Cracked cardamom seeds follow, then a pinch of gray salt from a leather pouch, and then he waits for the heat to finish. He pours the tea into a wide clay bowl and offers it with nothing more than a nod and a steady gaze. You wrap both hands around the warm clay, and the heat floods through your palms as the steam rises to touch your cheeks and eyelids. When you drink, the taste is savory and deep, because the salt has transformed the bitterness into something far richer and older. Across the courtyard, through the warm blur of your half-closed eyes, 2 men are carefully unwrapping one of the larger bundles. The oiled canvas falls away, then a layer of rough cotton, and then something catches the firelight in a way nothing else does. A fabric spills over the edge, moving in slow, liquid folds that shift from deep plum to violet as they drape across the merchant's arm. Where the light grazes its thinnest edge, the color turns to something almost silver, and you cannot look away from it. This is silk, though the word means nothing until you see it move like water and catch light like something almost alive. The nearest merchant notices your gaze and holds out a narrow strip, no wider than your finger, across the firelit space between you. You press it between your fingers and feel almost nothing, which is exactly what startles you about the touch of it. The smoothness is so complete that it seems to exist beyond what your skin was ever designed to properly sense or understand. The strip rests in your open palm, weighing less than a breath, while the fire murmurs beside you and the courtyard settles into quiet. Dawn is filling the gate in a long, warm shape, but inside these ancient walls, everything remains gentle and slow. The heat of the day has arrived outside, pressing against the walls like something alive that wants to be let inside. But it cannot reach you here, because the mud and straw of this room are nearly 2 feet thick on every side. You are lying on a low platform in one of the rooms off the courtyard, where the air is cool and dim and perfectly still. The walls hold the cold of the previous night inside their clay, releasing it slowly the way a river stone releases the chill of deep water. A shaft of afternoon light enters through a narrow opening high on the wall and falls across the stone floor at a steep angle. Tiny particles of dust turn slowly inside that beam, suspended and weightless, as though gravity has quietly decided to forget about them. Beneath you, layered felt blankets carry the faint scent of lanolin and clean dust, and your body has softened into them completely. Your shoulders have released whatever tension remained from the long night of walking, and your breathing has become slow and even and deep. The curtain shifts, and the older man from the fire steps inside carrying a small cloth bundle carefully in both hands. He sits on the stone floor near the foot of your platform with the ease of someone who has sat this way his whole life. After a moment, he unwraps the bundle, and resting on the cloth like a pale jewel is a cocoon no larger than your thumb's first joint. He holds it out to you, and you take it into your open palm, where it weighs less than a breath against your skin. When you bring it close, you see that the surface is made entirely of thread, one single continuous strand wound around itself in patient loops. Layer over careful layer, it forms a texture finer than any linen you have ever touched or seen with your own eyes. He begins to speak in a low, unhurried voice that blends with the stillness the way smoke blends with perfectly calm air. He tells you about a creature no longer than your smallest finger, pale and soft and almost translucent, the color of fresh cream. From the moment it hatches, smaller than a grain of rice, this caterpillar does only one thing with its brief, quiet life. It eats the leaves of the mulberry tree, and only mulberry, because nothing else will satisfy its ancient and particular hunger. He pauses and tells you to imagine the smell of those leaves, broad and soft, carrying a faint green sweetness like cut grass after rain. In the silk farms of ancient China, 10,000 caterpillars feeding on mulberry filled entire rooms with a continuous, peaceful rustling sound. After roughly 4 weeks of ceaseless eating, the caterpillar grows to nearly 70 times its original size, and then stops completely. Its body has filled with a thick, clear protein inside 2 long glands that run the entire length of its small, soft form. Without any signal, it lifts its head and begins tracing a slow figure 8 in the air with a patience beyond understanding. From a small opening below its mouth, a single thread emerges, liquid at first, but hardening the instant it touches the open air around it. For 3 days and 3 nights, the creature wraps itself in its own thread, layer after layer, each pass slightly tighter than the last. When the cocoon is finished, that single unbroken filament, if you carefully unwound it, would stretch for nearly an entire mile. You turn the cocoon slowly in your hand and think about the distance held inside something the size of a small, pale pebble. A mile of thread, spun without rest from the body of a creature you could balance on the tip of your smallest finger. The old man tells you that China guarded this secret for 3,000 years with a penalty that allowed no mercy or appeal. Smuggling silkworm eggs or mulberry seeds beyond the empire's borders meant death, because silk was far more than a beautiful fabric to the state. It was currency and diplomacy and power, a language that emperors spoke to other emperors across vast distances of conquered land. Soldiers received payment in bolts of silk instead of coin, and treaties between rival kingdoms were sealed with gifts of this impossible cloth. The Western world was desperate to learn the secret, but believed for centuries that silk grew on some kind of miraculous tree. The Romans imagined it was combed from enchanted leaves in a distant forest, never suspecting that it came from a soft, blind worm. He lets that thought settle in the quiet room, where the shaft of light has moved slightly across the floor since he began. Then he tells you one final story, the oldest one of all, about an empress who lived 5,000 years ago. Her name was Leizu, wife of the Yellow Emperor, and on a drowsy afternoon she sat beneath a mulberry tree in the palace garden. She held a cup of hot tea when a cocoon fell silently from a branch above and dropped into the dark, steaming water. She watched it float and turn slowly, and as the heat softened the cocoon, a single luminous thread separated from its surface. It drifted in the tea like a strand of captured moonlight, and Lezu reached in and pinched the end between her careful fingers. She pulled, and the thread did not break, so she pulled more, winding the shining filament slowly around her finger beneath the tree. In that small, quiet gesture on a warm afternoon, an entire civilization's future was changed by one woman and one cup of tea. The old man falls silent, and the room holds its stillness around both of you like water cradling the shape of a vessel. You look at the cocoon in your palm, this tiny thing containing a mile of thread and 3,000 years of carefully guarded secrets. He rises, gathers his cloth, and tells you at the curtain that tonight the caravan moves again beneath the open sky. When the stars return, he says, there will be another lesson, one written not in thread, but in ancient, slowly turning light. The room is yours again, cool and dim, and the cocoon rests in your closed hand as your breathing deepens towards sleep. Somewhere far away, in a place between memory and dream, you can almost smell the mulberry leaves, green and soft and faintly sweet. You wake to a hand on your shoulder, and when you open your eyes, the room is dark, and the sky in the narrow window is deep blue. In the courtyard, men are already loading the camels, their hands working by feel and memory in the near darkness without hesitation. You pull the heavy coat around your shoulders and wind the scarf around your neck before stepping into the open courtyard outside. The cold meets you immediately, deeper than last night, the kind that tightens the skin across your forehead and enters through your eyes. Each breath burns faintly at the very back of your throat, and the air tastes of nothing but clean stone and vast open distance. The camels file through the gate, and you fall into your place in the line as the Caravanserai shrinks behind you into nothing. The desert opens again, wide and black, and the rhythm of walking returns to your legs without any effort or conscious thought. The camel beside you breathes in its slow, deep rhythm that matches your own pace, and the leather straps resume their patient creaking. The bundles sway gently overhead, and everything settles back into the ancient, familiar pattern of this road beneath the stars. Tonight, someone new is walking beside you, a tall, lean man with a leather satchel slung across one shoulder and long, easy strides. You noticed him earlier crouching by the gate with a small brass instrument, turning it slowly and studying something you could not see. After a while of comfortable silence, he lifts his chin toward the sky and asks whether you know how to find your way when there are no roads. You do not. And he nods as though this is the answer he was hoping for before he begins to teach. He tells you to tilt your head back, and you do, and the sky falls open above you with a weight that feels almost physical. The stars are so dense that the darkness between them seems thin, and some burn white with an almost blue intensity that feels cold to see. Others glow faintly gold and seem impossibly far away, belonging to a depth of sky your eyes were never quite designed to reach. Your neck aches from the angle, and the cold presses against your face, but you do not look down from what you are seeing. He raises his arm and points to the northern sky, where 7 bright stars form a pattern like a great ladle or a plow. He tells you to find the 2 stars forming the outer edge of the bowl and draw an invisible line through them, extended upward. Your eyes follow that line, and at its end sits a single star that burns with a pale, steady light and an uncommon stillness. It is not the brightest in the sky, but it holds its position with a patience that nothing else above you seems to possess. Every other star in the heavens moves, rising in the east and setting in the west in slow arcs through the long night. But this star sits almost directly above the northern pole of the earth, and the entire sky appears to rotate around its fixed, ancient point. This is Polaris, the North Star, and every navigator who has ever crossed this desert began their journey by finding it above them. If Polaris hangs directly ahead of you, then you are walking north, and if it rests above your right shoulder, you are heading west. The sky is not flat, he explains, but a great sphere wrapping around the earth, divided by an invisible line called the celestial equator. If you measure the angle between the horizon and a known star, you can calculate exactly how far north or south you stand. The desert itself offers no other clues, because the dunes shift and the riverbeds vanish and the sand erases footprints within hours. But the stars do not change their positions, and they are the only map that cannot be lost or stolen or burned by anyone. He reaches into his satchel and draws out the brass instrument, and the starlight catches its surface in a faint, warm gleam. It is circular and flat, about the size of his palm, heavy with the particular weight of something made to last for many centuries. Tiny numbers and concentric circles have been engraved into the brass with a precision that seems almost impossibly fine and careful. This is an astrolabe, and he holds it vertical by a ring at the top, sighting along a pointer toward the pale star above them both. The angle where the pointer meets the outer scale tells him how high the star sits above the horizon in precise numbered degrees. That single number equals his latitude on the earth, and the elegance of it makes you draw a slow, quiet breath of admiration. This instrument was perfected by Persian and Arab astronomers over 1,000 years ago in cities like Baghdad, Isfahan, and Samarkand along this road. They spent lifetimes mapping more than 1,000 stars, not for conquest, but because the caravans needed to find their way safely home. Commerce drove the mathematics, and the silk trade demanded that the sky itself be read, and so the astronomers learned to chart it. He places the astrolabe back into the satchel, and the brass disappears into leather, and you begin walking together again in comfortable silence. The cold has become a familiar thing now, sitting against your skin like a second coat, constant and clean and no longer surprising to you. Your breathing has matched the camel's rhythm without your choosing it, and you look up once more at the sky slowly turning above you. The great ladle has tilted since you last noticed it, its handle pointing now toward a different part of the dark horizon. But Polaris has not moved, and it will not move, burning where it has always burned with its pale and patient and faithful light. The desert is not empty after all, because the sky above it is full of information written in light older than any language ever spoken. The caravan moves westward, and ahead, somewhere beyond the curve of the earth, empires are waiting with marble and gold and hunger. But that is a story for the next stretch of this road, and for now there is only the walking, the cold, and the ancient, turning sky. The landscape has been changing beneath you for what might be hours or might be days, because time moves differently on this ancient road. The sand is no longer pale and fine, but has darkened with gravel and small stones that press gently through the soles of your boots. Far ahead, a faint ridge of mountains has appeared along the horizon, blue and distant, like a thought not yet fully formed inside a drowsy mind. The air carries something new as well, a faint dampness that smells of earth and green things growing somewhere out of sight. You are riding now instead of walking, because your body has grown heavy with a tiredness that feels warm rather than unpleasant. The camel's gait rocks you gently, forward and back, like a boat crossing a wide, calm, ancient sea beneath the stars. Your hands rest loosely on the saddle frame. Your eyes are half closed, and the night is quiet around you in every direction. The old merchant sleeps on his camel further back, and the familiar sound of hooves on harder ground is the only rhythm left in the world. In this rocking stillness, the story of the road unfolds in your mind, like a map being slowly opened across a wide table. You think about where the silk began its journey, and where it is going, and why anyone would carry it so impossibly far. The answer begins in a city called Chang'an, which the world would later know as Xi'an, the ancient capital of Imperial China. At its peak, more than 1 million people lived within its walls, making it one of the largest cities anywhere on the face of the earth. From Chang'an, the road stretched westward through mountain passes, across burning deserts, and along the edges of high, frozen plateaus for thousands of miles. It split into branches, wound through the oasis towns of Central Asia, and eventually reached the shores of the distant Mediterranean Sea. No single merchant ever walked the entire length alone, because goods passed from hand to hand through a long chain of traders. Each one carried the cargo a few hundred miles before selling it forward, so that silk changed owners many times before reaching its final destination. The camel shifts its weight as the ground changes, and you sway with it without waking from your half-dreaming, half-listening state. The rocking continues, and the cool air moves across your face like a slow hand brushing hair from your half-closed eyes. At the western end of that chain sat Rome, the most powerful empire the ancient world had ever known or even dared to imagine. And Rome was utterly, hopelessly in love with Chinese silk from the very first moment it arrived on Italian shores. The fabric was lighter than linen and stronger than wool, with a luminous sheen that no Mediterranean technique could ever hope to replicate. Roman senators wore it publicly. Their wives draped it across dining couches, and the demand grew wildly without any natural limit or restraint. The problem was that Rome had almost nothing China wanted in return, because China was self-sufficient in grain and metal and timber. So Rome paid in gold, and that gold flowed steadily eastward along the same roads the silk traveled westward, year after year without ceasing. A Roman senator and naturalist named Pliny the Elder watched this hemorrhage of wealth with growing alarm and deep moral frustration at the loss. He estimated that Rome spent 100 million sesterces every year on luxury imports from the East, a staggering sum for any civilization. He wrote bitterly that Roman gold was being drained to pay for fabric so thin that it concealed nothing and adorned everything. In his view, the empire's appetite for Eastern luxury was a sickness that would eventually hollow out the treasury from within. Your body sways gently with the camel's steady rhythm, and you feel yourself sinking deeper into the warmth of your coat and the saddle beneath you. The mountains ahead are slightly closer now, their blue shapes sharpening just barely against the paler darkness of the sky behind them. What Pliny could not see, because no single person standing at one end of the road could see the whole of it, was the larger truth. The Silk Road was not merely a trade route carrying luxury goods between two empires that happened to sit at opposite ends of the world. It was an economic system of extraordinary complexity, involving dozens of kingdoms, hundreds of cities, and thousands of intermediary merchants along the way. Taxes were collected at every border crossing, and local economies from Persia to India grew wealthy simply by being located along the path. The price of silk multiplied enormously as it moved westward, not because of greed alone, but because of the accumulated cost of distance itself. Each merchant needed profit, each camel needed feeding, each mountain pass charged a toll, and each oasis city took its measured patient share. By the time a bolt of Chinese silk reached a Roman market stall, its price had increased by several hundred times over what it originally cost. A single pound of fine silk could be worth more than a pound of gold in the markets of the imperial capital. The camel rocks you gently forward, and you feel the weight of your own head beginning to nod slowly toward your chest below. The air carries that green, damp scent more strongly now, and somewhere far away, beyond the mountains, rain is falling on earth that has been waiting. Empires rose and fell along this road, their fortunes tied to the silk that passed through their lands and filled their treasuries with wealth. When the route was open, cities flourished with learning and art, and when wars closed the passes, those same cities quietly withered and disappeared. The road was more than a path through the desert, and the silk was more than cloth moving from east to west beneath the stars. It was the connective tissue of the ancient world, binding civilizations together across distances no single human life could ever fully cross alone. Your eyes have closed, and the rocking of the camel has become the only motion left in the entire still, dark world around you. The mountains wait ahead, the rain waits beyond them, and the road carries you forward with the patience it has shown 10,000 travelers before. But silk was only the most famous of the things that moved along this ancient road between the great civilizations at either end. There were other travelers on this path carrying cargo far more extraordinary than cloth, and their story belongs to the next quiet miles ahead. The caravan has stopped, and you are not sure when it happened, because the boundary between moving and stillness has become very soft. You are sitting on a low stone wall in the shade of a building covered in pale blue tiles that catch the morning light. This is an oasis city, one of the great resting points where branches of the Silk Road converge before splitting apart once more. It sits in a valley fed by snowmelt from the mountains you crossed during the night, and everything here is green and alive. But you are watching from a quiet corner, because your body is too heavy and too warm and too deeply rested to consider moving. Your back leans against the cool tiles, your eyes are barely open, and the city reaches you only as a gentle wash of sound. Voices drift across the square in languages you do not recognize, layered over each other like colors in a woven cloth from far away. Somewhere to your left, a merchant is weighing something on a brass scale, and you hear the faint ring of metal finding its balance. The air is warm and heavy with scent, and you breathe it in slowly without trying to separate one fragrance from another inside it. Saffron is there, dry and golden and faintly bitter, and beneath it the deep, woody sweetness of sandalwood drifting from somewhere you cannot see. There is also the smell of old paper, dry and slightly sweet, the particular scent of ink and pressed fiber aged in still air. It drifts from a stall nearby where manuscripts are stacked in careful piles, their pages covered in scripts from a dozen different traditions. Paper itself traveled this road, moving westward from China where it was invented more than 2,000 years ago from mulberry bark. Before paper reached the West, Europeans wrote on animal skin scraped thin, a material so expensive that it limited who could afford to write at all. When paper arrived through the Silk Road, it changed the cost of recording thought so dramatically that knowledge itself began to spread outward. Libraries grew, letters multiplied, and writing became possible for thousands of people who could never have afforded parchment in their entire lives. Your eyelids lower a little further, and the sounds of the market soften into something almost musical, a hum without edges or sharp notes. The blue tiles behind your back are cool and smooth, and you can feel the slow rhythm of your own heartbeat in your resting hands. Gunpowder moved along this road as well, invented in China by alchemists searching not for weapons, but for an elixir of eternal life. They mixed saltpeter with sulfur and charcoal, and the explosive result traveled westward through Persia and the Arab world before finally reaching Europe. Spices moved in the opposite direction, with black pepper, cinnamon, and cloves traveling eastward from India and the islands of Southeast Asia. Glass beads from Roman workshops were exchanged for jade, and musical instruments evolved as they passed through each culture's particular hands and ears. But the most extraordinary things that traveled this road were not objects that could be weighed on a scale or packed onto camels for the journey. They were ideas, moving more slowly than silk and more quietly than paper, but changing the world far more deeply than either one. Buddhism was born in India around the 5th century before the Common Era, in the teachings of a prince who sat beneath a tree. It might have remained a local faith, known only in the plains of the Indian subcontinent, where it first took root and flowered. Instead, it traveled eastward along the Silk Road, carried by monks who walked the same trails your caravan has followed through the desert. They built monasteries in caves of mountain passes and translated sacred texts into new languages at every stop along the way. By the time Buddhism reached China, it had been shaped by every culture it passed through, absorbing local customs and artistic styles at each crossing. The serene stone Buddhas carved into cliff faces across Central Asia still mark the path it followed, like footprints left in rock. Centuries later, Islam moved along the same corridors, carried not by armies alone, but by merchants who traded honestly and prayed 5 times daily. The people of the oasis cities watched these traders and were drawn to the discipline and clarity of the faith they quietly practiced. Your breathing has become so slow that you can feel each rib expand and settle individually, like keys on an instrument being pressed one at a time. The saffron scent drifts past you again, and the voices in the market have become so distant that they could be coming from another century. Perhaps the quietest traveler on this road was a number, a concept so small and silent that it carried no weight whatsoever. It was zero, the idea that nothing itself could be something, that absence could be given a name and a place among other figures. Zero was born in India, where mathematicians understood its power centuries before the rest of the world grasped what it could mean. It traveled westward through Persia, where scholars translated Indian texts into Arabic and refined the number system into something elegant and complete. From Persia, it reached Baghdad, and from Baghdad, it crossed into Europe through the trading ports of the Mediterranean and through Spain. Without zero, there could be no algebra, no precise astronomy, no accounting systems complex enough to manage the economies of growing nations and empires. The entire mathematical framework that would later produce navigation, engineering, and the digital world you left behind tonight was built on this concept. It traveled this road in the mind of a merchant or a monk, weightless and invisible and world-changing beyond any measure. The market sounds have faded now to almost nothing, and the warmth of the morning sun lies across your lap like a folded blanket placed there gently. The scent of sandalwood has softened to the faintest trace, and the blue tiles hold you steady against the slow pull of sleep. Everything that mattered in the ancient world passed through places like this, carried by people who walked or rode or simply talked with strangers. Silk and paper and gunpowder, prayers and numbers and stories, all of them traveling the same patient, dusty, extraordinary road toward the future. Your eyes are nearly closed now, and the oasis city has become more of a feeling than a place you can see with any clarity. The road still stretches ahead, but its final miles are quiet ones, and the story is beginning to find the shape of its gentle ending. The road has brought you to a hillside, and you do not remember how or when the caravan finally stopped moving. You are lying on your back in the dry grass, and the earth beneath you is warm from yesterday's sun still held inside it. The sky above you is no longer dark, because dawn has arrived fully, and the stars have quietly let go of their places one by one. A pale golden light is spreading from the east, and it touches everything it reaches with a warmth that feels like the beginning of a promise. You can see the desert from here, stretched out below in every direction, vast and brown and impossibly still in the early golden light. The trail you followed is invisible now, hidden in the sameness of the sand, as though the earth has already begun to forget your steps. But the road remembers, even when the sand does not, because the road is not made of dirt or stone or any material thing at all. It is made of the 10,000 journeys that have crossed this land, each one leaving something behind that cannot be seen but can still be felt. A monk carried a prayer across these mountains, and it took root in a country that had never heard it spoken before, in any voice. A merchant's daughter hid silkworm eggs in her hair and carried a secret across a border that had been sealed for 3,000 careful years. A mathematician wrote a small circle on a page in a quiet room in India, and that circle traveled westward until it became the foundation of everything the modern world would build. None of them knew how far their gifts would travel, and none of them needed to know. That is the last thought the road offers you, and it is enough. because the history has done its gentle work, and there is nothing left to learn tonight. The facts dissolve like the stars dissolved, quietly and completely, leaving only the warmth and the stillness and the slow weight of your body. The sun is climbing now, and you can feel its light on your face even through your closed eyelids, a soft pressure that is golden and warm. It rests on your forehead first, then spreads slowly across your cheeks and down to your chin, like a warm cloth being laid carefully over your skin. Your hands are open at your sides, palms facing upward, and the warmth settles into them the way water settles into a cupped palm held very still. Your fingers are heavy, and your wrists are heavy, and the weight travels slowly up through your arms toward your shoulders. Your shoulders press deeper into the earth beneath you, and you can feel the ground accepting your weight without resistance or hurry. It holds you the way it has held every traveler who has ever stopped here, patiently and completely, and without asking for anything in return. The air moves across your face in a breath so faint that you cannot tell where the air ends and the warmth of the sun begins. It carries no scent now, only the clean, empty stillness of a morning that has nowhere it needs to be, and nothing it needs to become. Your breathing has slowed to a rhythm that feels as old and as deep as the earth beneath your back, each inhale arriving without effort. Each exhale leaves your body a little heavier, a little more settled, a little more certain that this stillness is exactly where it wants to be. Your chest rises slowly, and the warm air fills your lungs, and there is a pause at the top where everything is perfectly, completely still. Then the breath leaves, and your body sinks, and the earth holds you, and the space between one breath and the next grows wider and softer. The desert stretches out below you in the golden light, vast and quiet, and it does not need you to watch it any longer to continue being beautiful. The road is there, somewhere beneath the sand, patient and ancient, and it will still be there when the next caravan arrives. But that is not your concern now, because there is nothing left in the world that requires your attention or your wakefulness or your thought. The sun is warm on your face, and the earth is warm beneath your back, and everything is still, and everything is held, and everything is safe. Your eyes have been closed for a long time now, and the golden light behind your eyelids is beginning to soften into something deeper and darker. It is not the darkness of the desert night you walked through, but a different kind of dark, warm and close and infinitely gentle. It is the darkness of sleep arriving, not as a sudden thing, but as a slow tide rising from somewhere beneath the ground you rest upon. It reaches your feet first, then your ankles, then your knees, moving upward through your body with a patience that asks nothing of you at all. Your legs are gone now, heavy and warm and no longer yours, and the tide continues rising through your hips and into your stomach. Your chest breathes on its own, slowly, slowly, without your help, and your arms have sunk into the earth like stones settling into soft, warm water. The last thing you feel is the warmth on your face, the sun pressing gently against your closed eyes like a kind hand saying goodnight. Then that too softens, and the hillside and the desert and the road and the sky all fold together into a single quiet warmth. You are asleep. The Silk Road remembers you, and the stars will be there when you wake, and everything is well, and everything is still. This has been Kaito. Thank you for walking the ancient road with me tonight. Sleep well. Good night.